He spent 20 years locked away for something unspeakable. But today, spiritual seekers call him master. What happened in that prison? No one expected. There were no temples, no monks, no incense, just a small concrete cell, a steel bed, and silence. He entered that place angry, violent, and hollow. He didn't meditate. He didn't believe in God. He didn't believe in anything. But something changed. Not in one day. Not in 1 year. Slowly, painfully, something inside him cracked. Not from weakness, but from awakening. While others fought, he sat. While others yelled, he breathed. And then, one day, he wept. Not from regret, but from a strange kind of peace he couldn't explain. Today, people travel miles just to sit in silence beside him. They call him a teacher of the mind. But he still calls himself a man unlearning harm. Is it possible for the worst among us to become a guide to peace? He never set foot in a temple. He never read a single sutra. The only chants he ever heard were from men cursing each other through steel bars. 20 years behind walls where the idea of peace was a joke. And yet, they call him enlightened. A man who once shattered bones with his fists, now teaches people how to sit still and breathe. At first, no one believed it. How could they? The man was a ghost in his own body. Rage wrapped in flesh. Eyes like knives. Voice like thunder. He had nothing. No future. No forgiveness. And he didn't want either. His name used to strike fear. Not because he was the strongest, but because he had no off switch. You looked at him wrong. He'd break your jaw. You bumped into him. You might not wake up the next morning. He didn't believe in karma. He believed in survival. Eye for an eye. Pain for pain. But life, strange and cruel, has its own way of cornering even the wildest animals. And one day, in the back corner of a prison library, he found something that changed nothing. And then changed everything. It wasn't a holy book. It was a torn-up magazine, left on a bench. One page. One sentence. You are not your thoughts. He didn't know why that sentence hit him. He laughed at it. At first. Thought it was soft. Weak. But it stayed with him. Like a splinter in the mind. That night, while screams echoed from other cells and someone banged on the pipes again and again just to feel alive, he sat in silence. For the first time. He didn't plan violence. He just listened. The next morning, he asked the librarian if they had any books on silence. She stared. Said, "What?" He repeated it, silence. The word felt foreign in his mouth. Like something he wasn't meant to say. She handed him a book with a faded cover, The Art of Sitting. He read it twice. Then again. Something inside him was waking up. And it terrified him. Not because it was soft. But because it was honest. All those years, he thought power came from fear. Now he was beginning to suspect that power might come from stillness. Other inmates mocked him. Called him monk. Laughed when he sat cross-legged in his cell. But he didn't care. Every day, the violence in his body grew quieter. Every breath made room for something unfamiliar, peace. Not the kind sold in books or chanted in foreign languages. A raw, aching, terrifying kind of peace. The kind that forced him to face what he had done. The people he had hurt. The lives he had destroyed. And instead of justifying it, he wept. Alone. In silence. A guard once asked him, "Why don't you fight anymore?" He said, "Because I already lost everything I was." That answer made its way through the prison. Some laughed. Some ignored it. But a few started sitting with him. At first just curious. Then committed. Then devoted. He didn't preach. He didn't convert. He just breathed. And let others witness a man burning the poison inside him without saying a word. The news eventually reached the outside. A journalist visited. Sat with him for an hour. She left crying. Her article went viral. The killer who found nirvana. Comments poured in. Some full of outrage. Others awe. He doesn't deserve redemption. Someone wrote. Maybe neither do we. Replied another. The world didn't know what to make of him. A murderer who teaches forgiveness. A criminal who radiates calm. A walking contradiction. But maybe that's what awakening looks like in this lifetime. Not robes. Not incense. Just a man who stared at his own darkness. And didn't blink. He didn't ask to teach anyone. In fact, when the first man called him teacher, he almost punched him. Old reflex. But the guy just laughed. Bowed slightly. And said, I learned more from you in silence than I ever did from sermons. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt. Not even from pride. But confusion. How did his brokenness become someone else's compass? He used to believe redemption was a word for cowards. Something people made up to sleep better after doing unforgivable things. But now he was beginning to sense it was real. Not soft. Not easy. But earned. Breath by breath. Not given by society. But discovered within. And the deeper he sat with it, the more he realized something terrifying. Peace doesn't erase the past. It stares straight at it. One morning, an old man with sunken eyes came to visit him. Said nothing. Just looked at him through the glass for 5 full minutes. Then he whispered, You killed my son. The words felt like a blade. He froze. No excuses. No tears. Just breath. The old man stared into him like fire. Then, before leaving, he said, If you can find peace in there, maybe my son can too. He didn't move for hours after that. Didn't eat. Didn't blink. The guilt flooded his chest like water in locked lungs. But he didn't run. Didn't numb it. He breathed through it. For days. For weeks. Until one morning, it no longer drowned him. It sat beside him. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. But witnessed. That's when he realized, maybe enlightenment isn't about escaping pain. Maybe it's about refusing to look away. Word spread beyond the prison. Psychologists started citing him in journals. Monks began writing letters asking him about his meditation practice. He laughed when he read them. I'm not a monk. He wrote back. I'm just a man who finally shut up long enough to hear the truth. But the letters kept coming. One day, a young woman sent him a note. My brother died because of someone like you. But your story helped me breathe again. Thank you. He stared at that note for hours. Folded it. Unfolded it. Folded it again. He didn't feel worthy of it. He didn't even feel human some days. But slowly, with each breath, each letter, each moment he chose stillness over rage. He began to understand. Maybe peace isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you earn. By dying to everything false inside you. The guards started noticing something strange. Fights would stop when he entered the yard. Men who once ruled with fists now sat quietly near him. No orders. No lectures. Just presence. Pure. Unsettling. Calming presence. One guard said, He's not the same man. It's like something got reborn in his skin. And the old one just left. But the past never leaves. Not really. Sometimes. At night. He'd wake up drenched in sweat. Fists clenched. Heart racing. Shadows of the man he used to be creeping back in. And instead of pushing them away, he'd sit up, light a small candle, and breathe. Not to erase them, but to say, I see you. I know you. But I'm no longer yours. He never asked for followers. But they came. Slowly. Awkwardly. Like stray animals unsure if the hand reaching out meant food or a trap. Some were gang leaders. Some were addicts. A few were killers. Men society had labeled beyond repair. They didn't come for sermons. They came because something about him didn't make sense. How could someone who'd once been pure rage now radiate stillness? How could someone so dangerous become so calm without losing the fire in his eyes? They started copying his silence. Not understanding it. Just mimicking it. Sitting near him without speaking. At first for minutes. Then for hours. No one dared call it meditation. It was too soft a word in a place like this. But that's what it was. And in time, the silence between them grew thicker than any sermon. He watched one man. Someone who used to stab others for looking at him wrong, sit quietly for an hour. Then break down crying over a memory he hadn't touched in 20 years. No one mocked him. No one spoke. They just breathed. Some called it a cult. A journalist even wrote, "Is this prison monk leading a dangerous spiritual movement?" The headline exploded. The warden was pressured to investigate. But all they found were books. Candles. Men sitting with their eyes closed. One guard whispered, "If this is dangerous, maybe the world needs more danger like this." Outside the prison, things got stranger. A documentary was made about him. Viewers were divided. Some said he should never be allowed to speak. Others called him proof that human nature is not fixed. One religious leader said, "Forgiveness is for the repentant. But this man is teaching others. That's blasphemy." Another replied, "Perhaps he's doing what we should have done all along. Healing where others gave up." People argued. Should a murderer be allowed to teach peace? Should a former criminal be quoted like a monk? Could someone with blood on their hands ever truly guide others toward the light? He never answered those questions. When asked in an interview, he simply said, "I'm not guiding anyone. I'm just sitting still. If that helps someone else do the same, I'm grateful. But don't follow me. Sit with yourself." It didn't stop people from coming. One by one, visitors sat across from him in the visitors' room. Some asked about karma. Others about anger. A few just wept and said nothing at all. He never gave answers. Just stories. Like the one about the scorpion that stung the monk trying to save it. Or the one about the man who carried a stone for 40 years. Only to realize it was never chained to him. But the story that haunted him most was his own. He once told a man, "Don't confuse peace with forgetfulness. I remember everything. Every scream. Every bruise. Every broken face. But I breathe through it, not to forget, but to keep it from owning me." That's when people started saying, maybe what makes him dangerous is not his past, but his proof. Proof that transformation isn't poetic, it's violent. It requires death. Not of the body, but of the ego. The old self must burn. And in that fire, some find madness. Others, awakening. They didn't plan to release him. His sentence was meant to last for life. But things change. Files get reviewed. Behavior gets noted. And sometimes, systems that lock people up forget they're still watching. After 20 years, A quiet clerk pushed through his name. An early release. No fanfare. Just a date. When the news came, he didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He just bowed his head and said nothing. The inmates around him were stunned. Some cried. Others asked, "Will you start a temple?" He shook his head. "There's no temple outside I need. I already built one in here." The day he walked out, cameras waited. Not to welcome him, but to expose him. Protesters held signs, "A killer doesn't deserve peace." One man screamed, "Where's his victim's peace?" He didn't flinch. Didn't respond. Just stood silently. Hands clasped. As if bowing. Not to the crowd, but to the pain. He didn't go home. There was no home. He found a small cabin near the edge of a forgotten forest, rented by a stranger who had once read his story in a newspaper and felt something. He said, "I don't know why I'm letting you stay here, but something tells me you're safer in the woods than the world." He didn't disagree. There were no followers there. No guards. No rules. Just wind. Trees. Silence. And memories. They didn't leave him. In fact, outside, they screamed louder. But now, he had a place to sit with them. Really sit. Not as a prisoner. Not as a master. Just as a man who had destroyed and now must rebuild, with nothing but breath. It didn't take long for seekers to find him again. They came in broken, carrying invisible wounds. A man whose daughter had died from gang violence. A woman whose brother was killed in a robbery. A teenager full of rage and on the edge of snapping. None of them knew what they wanted. They just knew the world's answers weren't helping. And still, he didn't offer teachings. Just space. A place to fall apart without judgment. He would boil tea. Sit across from them. And listen. Truly listen. The way no one had ever listened to him when he was younger. Sometimes they wept. Sometimes they screamed. Sometimes they just sat, numb. He said little. But when he did speak, it was never to fix. It was to reflect. Once, a woman broke down and asked him, "How dare you, after what you've done, help people like me?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then whispered, "Because I broke the world, too. And now, all I can do, is hold the pieces. One by one." The internet called him the criminal healer. Debates flared up again. Articles with titles like, "Should spiritual guidance come from a killer?" filled comment sections with war. Some called him the future of radical redemption. Others said he was a symbol of moral decay. A few said, maybe we're not angry at him. Maybe we're terrified that if someone like him can change, we no longer have excuses. He never joined the arguments. He didn't defend himself. He just kept making tea, lighting incense, sitting with anyone who showed up. And when no one came, he sat alone, eyes closed, hands still, body breathing, as if that moment, quiet and unseen, was more sacred than all the noise in the world. The invitation came sealed. A national broadcast. Prime time. Live. 1 hour. The host was famous for destroying politicians with a smile. And now, she wanted him. America deserves to see the monster. Someone tweeted. He didn't want to go. But something in him said yes. Not for redemption. Not for image. But because silence doesn't mean hiding. When he entered the studio, the room fell quiet. Not out of respect, but tension. Some producers refused to shake his hand. The host greeted him with the kind of smile knives wear. "Let's not waste time," she said. "Do you believe someone like you deserves peace?" He looked at her. Steady. "No. But I discovered peace doesn't care what you deserve. She leaned in. You took lives. You destroyed families. Now you teach peace. Do you see the hypocrisy? He didn't blink. I see the pain. The audience watched. Torn. Some leaned forward. Curious. Others recoiled. One woman whispered, "Why do I feel like crying?" Then came the unexpected. A surprise guest. A woman walked onto the stage. Older. Trembling. The screen behind her showed a face. Young. Innocent. Gone. Her son. One of his victims. Gasps. The host smirked. "Do you recognize her?" He stood. Hands at his sides. Silent. The woman stared at him. Eyes filled with every storm a human soul could hold. She raised a shaking finger. "You shattered my world. And I hate you for it. Every single day." But silence. "When I saw you sitting with those broken boys. When I heard what you said about breath. About not running from your own shadow." Tears now. "I realized I've been running from mine. I will never forgive you. But I see. You are not running either. And maybe, that means something." The room held its breath. He didn't defend himself. He didn't cry. He bowed. Slowly. Fully. As if his body finally understood the weight it had always carried. No words were spoken after the broadcast ended. That night, the internet caught fire. Murderer turned monk confronted on live TV. A mother's rage. A killer's silence. A nation divided. Is this redemption or manipulation? Some said he was acting. Others said they had never seen a man bow like that. But the ones who mattered were quiet. After the interview, he said nothing more. No social media posts. No public statements. People said he vanished. Like a ghost in a crowded city. But really, he just returned to the silence he knew best. Where the world's noise fades, leaving only the sound of his own breath. One day, a stranger came. Not a journalist or a follower, but a child. Wide-eyed. Curious. Unafraid. "Sir," the child asked, "why do you sit so still when everyone wants you to speak?" He looked into the child's eyes. With a gaze that held no explanations. No apologies. No excuses. Only another question. Unspoken. As if passed back to the child. And to the world. If even the darkest criminal can find the light, then who among us is still living in the shadows? Afraid to look, he stood up gently and walked toward the nearby forest. No words. No backward glance. Just silence. Leaving everyone to wonder, is transformation truly limited? Or is it the journey of souls brave enough to face the deepest darkness within themselves? And if that is true, then what are you hiding from?